we are learning from each other. We are saying we should no longer have a healthcare system that is particular for one country. Where we have successes, we need to be able to share them so that we look at an Africa that is healthy and that vision of an Africa what we want, the healthy Africa with all its people collaborating and working towards improvement of their lives. It's really the story. Yes, that's why I'm so happy that I'm here, because I can share my stories but also learn from others on how we can improve nursing care, how we can improve healthcare in general, and how we can actually have that ultimate goal of health and well-being for all, which is Sustainable Development Goal 3.
Apologies for that audio. Onto the story now. Former Democratic Republic of Congo President Joseph Kabila is being tried on charges including treason over his alleged support for Rwandan-backed militants. The trial of Kabila, who turned to live in Goma in May this year, began in Gombe district for the capital, Kinshasa. The former president faces charges of plotting to overthrow the government of President Felix Tshisekedi, who could result in a death sentence, as well as homicide, torture and rape linked to the anti-government force M23. Democracy activist Kabasu Babu Katalindu says perceptions of the public are divided.
The views and perceptions are divided. Those who are core Tshisekedi loyalists, of course, and militant of his party, they support him because according to them, the war must go on and Tshisekedi must militarily vanquish AFC M23 and also also crush all his political opponents to maintain his grip on power. On the other hand, people who side with the opposition and other organizations of civil society claim that or point out that accusation, the prosecution does make sense. First of all, in terms of the legal proceedings, and it is an aspect that has been pointed out by former President Kabila's lawyers.
The South African National Defence Force, SANDF, is investigating the death of its member who is suspected to have been trampled by elephants at Madimbo in Limpopo province. SANDF spokesperson Prince Shabalala says Private Xavier Reynard was found dead near the gate of Madimbo base on Sunday. Shabalala says Reynard was conducting routine patrols during the SANDF Operation Corona, a national initiative to protect the country's border. Shabalala says Reynard's service weapon was recovered at the scene. And Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says 7 more people have died on conditions linked to malnutrition over the last 24 hours. The announcement brings the reported number of hunger-related deaths since the start of the Gaza-Israel war to 151. More than half were children. Director of UN Women in Geneva, Sophia Kaltorp.
17,000 pregnant and breastfeeding women are facing acute malnutrition. And of course, services have collapsed. Those women and children are faced with absolutely nothing. They are delivering their babies without water, without any medical support.
A recap of your top story. The Sudan Doctors Network says 13 children have died in a Sudan displacement camp due to a severe food shortage. The camp, home to at least 7,000 people, has been severely impacted by malnutrition, particularly among young children, and has been repeatedly attacked by armed groups. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matabula Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee have formed a strategic task team to engage Sports Minister about funding. And the Rogers Cup, formerly known as the Canadian National Championship, is now part of the ATP Masters 1000 and the WTA 1000 circuits. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
It is exactly 8 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. A very good afternoon to you, Africa. A lot on the agenda that we'll be looking at today, including a focus on agriculture, understanding that the continent holds most of the world's uncultivated arable land but remains a net food importer. We'll be speaking this afternoon with the managing executive at the sector head agriculture for ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking on how it happens that Africa has so much unused farmland and where the opportunities lie and why so much food is still being imported. We'll also be focusing on Bank Serve Africa's latest data, which shows that South African salaries held steady in the month of June. This follows 3 months of moderation. And as discussed a bit earlier on, a focus on Lesotho as well and the impending 50% hike. Yes, that is the tariff hike that has been meted on Lesotho. All of that and more coming up on Africa in Business this afternoon.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
We begin here with the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa in South Africa, who says that access to affordable electricity capital for infrastructure is a top requirement to close the gaps that impede South Africa from full renewable energy access. Ramokgopa has called on the G20 Energy Transition Working Group to not only diversify energy supply by reducing emissions, but also to prioritize global energy finance. The group is attending its third technical meeting at Sun City in the Northwest Province, South Africa, which will see collaborations and knowledge sharing amongst global stakeholders about the role of nuclear energy. This as the world tries to mitigate the effects of climate change. SABC News reporter Tabang Morutlwa compiled this report.
The G20 member states gathered to present their stance on nuclear energy ahead of the ministerial meeting that will take place in October to hand over the G20 Leaders Summit set for November. Minister of Electricity and Energy Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa has called for implementation.
We must close the gaps that hold us back from achieving full energy access and economic development. We call on the G20 to give full and practical effect to Sustainable Development Goal 7, namely ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And the Africa Energy Efficiency Strategy must be supported, not only through declarations, but through practical interventions, investments, and partnerships that build resilience and shift outcomes.
While South Africa's nuclear program has been in operation for 40 years now, Ramokgopa says financial commitment is needed to expand the program.
Solar, wind, battery storage, and electric mobility are central to reducing emissions, diversifying energy supply, and expanding access. These technologies are rapidly becoming cost competitive, and their deployment must continue at scale. No transition will be sustainable without a fundamental reconfiguration of the global energy finance architecture. Scaling up climate and energy finance is not only urgent, but also central to closing the infrastructure gap, addressing energy poverty, and driving structural transformation and industrialization. We must shift from pledges to execution.
Rashid Abdallah of the African Union welcomed the engagements, hoping they will address Africa's energy poverty.
Our situation is different. We have 600 million, which represent more than 40% of our population without access to electricity. We have 1 billion still depend on the biomass for clean cooking. So we are in the energy poverty in most of our continent, and for that reason, African Union encourage all African member states to use all the resources to fix these gaps in terms of energy access and remove the energy poverty. Energy transition, it is part of the African Union agenda, and of course we are calling for just energy transition.
The Energy Transition Group will hold these deliberations for the next coming 3 days. I'm Tabang Murutwa, Sun City, outside Rustenburg.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Ngobeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It has gone exactly 13 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus now to Lesotho. Now, as various countries scramble to strike trade deals with the United States, this is ahead of the August 1st deadline when the U.S. reciprocal tariffs, as they are called, are set to be reimposed. Now, you will remember that this is after a 90-day pause. Now, one of the countries that will be the hardest hit is without a doubt the country of Lesotho, with reciprocal tariffs of 50%. Now, this is a higher rate than any other country, and this is when they were announced by the US President Donald Trump in the month of April. The CEO of the private sector foundation of Lesotho, Thabo Kgesi, says the country's economic prospects beyond the 1st of August are precarious, as the textile sector remains vulnerable. And this is coupled with the rather high unemployment rates and the poverty that are being experienced in Lesotho. He joins us now to discuss this further. Mr. Kgesi, a very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business.
Good afternoon to the listeners.
I wonder where you or how you would comment on this. There's the African Development Bank's country focused report, you'll remember, on Lesotho that shows that the country's economic growth is set to decelerate. And this is quite significant. Not a really good picture for the country, especially given the looming 50% tariff hike that Donald Trump has imposed. Your comments on the status?
Yeah, the situation is as reflected by African Development Bank because we don't see how we can cope with the 50% tariffs. You know, there's no way we can expect the textile and apparel sector to continue to do the business with the U.S. with that rate. Already, the buyers have stopped to place orders in our factories here, and some of the factories, they've begun to put the workers on short time. You know, as we speak, there are some workers who are already at home now, you know. Yes. So
not looking good at all. We have seen since the announcement of these tariffs in April, a number of countries scrambling to renegotiate with the United States in the hope of getting more favorable trade terms. Is this something that you as Lesotho have also endeavored to do? And if so, what has been the outcome?
The response that we had from the Minister of Trade is that they were waiting for a feedback. They made proposals like other countries, but they haven't yet got a feedback from the U.S. government. So putting us, in a peripheral situation.
You've spoken about the impact that this has already started to have on the textile industry, with many buyers not placing any orders. How has the diamond industry been affected?
Last week, it was a mere last week when we had one mining company announcing the retrenchment of some workers in order to keep their operating costs. So this is one sign, but that one of the mining is being affected by many factors, because already the global market prices have already declined, So I learned that the 50% that is being charged to the products of Lesotho also have a bearing, when after cutting and polishing, wherever it has to be exported, it will be subjected to that 50%, when it is exported to U.S. market, because, those rules of origin, you have to establish the origin of a product. So the mere fact that the diamonds will be coming from Lesotho. When the polished one get into the US market, they will be subjected to the 50% tariff. So clearly, those are some of the things that are minimizing chances of Lesotho diamonds to be exported to the US market.
And that, Mr. Kwesi, is even besides the fact that diamonds in and of themselves have been under pressure with the emerging popularity of lab manufactured diamonds. So not really putting you in a really good position there. But many other countries who are also in a similar situation as yourselves have focused on extending their markets and maybe looking at other markets that they can venture into. Has that been your strategy as well as Lesotho?
Yes, last month the government called all our ambassadors representing Lesotho in various countries. You know, I think one of the strategies was to give them the new mandate to establish the new markets. I think the government of Lesotho has already done something in that regard.
And as we close up this afternoon, the country relies quite heavily on Southern African Customs Union, the revenues that come from SACU, and those revenues account for about 22 to 30% of the country's GDP. These revenues are expected to decline quite significantly for financial year 2025-2026, something that will put a strain on the fiscal balances. Has the government perhaps communicated any measures to cushion against the economic disruptions that are expected?
Yes, we are quite aware that chances of South African exports declining are very high, and they have direct bearing to SACU revenue pool, which is where more than 40% of the national budget of Lesotho is coming from. So, like I said, last month the government of Lesotho called all our ambassadors to give them the new mandate to establish the new markets, even to invite new investments, you know. So I think that measure was also trying to cushion the loss of the revenue from the SACU revenue pool.
What have you identified perhaps as opportunities domestically within Lesotho to try and to stimulate trade, maybe manufacturing development? Because it does sound like there are a lot of external factors that are not advantageous to the country, its economy as well as its trade. What opportunities exist domestically within Lesotho itself?
Agriculture is one of the low-hanging fruit, taking into account that we have arable land, we have water, we have human resource. Only that we need is appropriate agricultural inputs to increase our agricultural productivity. So agriculture is the way to go, taking into account that every human being, you know, we eat every day, lunch, breakfast, supper, you know, we eat. So you can't go wrong with agriculture. So, and it doesn't require educated people, you know, to go to farming, you know. Yeah. So agriculture is the way to go.
All right, Mr. Thabo Kwesi, thank you so much for your insight this afternoon, and looking forward to seeing what the 1st of August is going to have in store for Lesotho and the strategies that are going to be put in place considering the external pressures that the country is facing right now. We thank you for your insight and your time, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's the CEO of Private Sector Foundation of Lesotho, Mr. Thabo Kwesi, taking us to exactly 22 minutes after 4 p.m.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
We turn our focus now to the latest developments coming out of Tanzania, where the government has issued a directive prohibiting non-citizens from owning and operating businesses across 15 specific sectors, which include retail trade, mobile money services, and local tour guiding. A policy signed by the Minister for Industry and Trade, Selemani Saidi Jafo, aims to safeguard opportunities for local entrepreneurs and impose hefty fines and potential imprisonment for those who violate this ban. For more on this, we joined on the line by SABC News correspondent in Tanzania, Daniel Kijo. A very good afternoon to you, Daniel. Good to have you with us. Perhaps give us an idea as to what exactly it is that brought this directive about. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. And indeed, it is a directive that has created quite a stir in the East African region. Basically, the government has banned foreign nationals from engaging in about 15 key business sectors. And the move that the government says is aimed at basically empowering local entrepreneurs and protecting small-scale enterprises. And of course, the restrictions are in line with part of the country's investment code and national development priorities. Obviously, the directive covers areas such as retail, trade, transportation, real estate, brokerage, mobile money operations, food vending, and beauty salon sectors, traditionally seen as easy access entry for small-scale investors. Now, our officials have argued that foreign participation in these areas undermine opportunities for Tanzania, especially the youth and women in the informal economy. It has insisted that the policy does not impact medium or large-scale foreign investors who remain welcomed in sectors such as manufacturing, infrastructure, tourism, etc. But of course, the announcement has created backlash.
And talking about this backlash, and in the 15 sectors that have been highlighted and that have been put under this directive, do we have an idea as to exactly what percentage of those businesses are actually owned by non-citizens? How widespread will the impact of this directive be?
Well, it is far-reaching because it has regional impacts due to some of the approaches with the East African community. But I'll start first of all with what the critics say. Most of them have warned that it will backfire and it will deter small foreign investors and could also fuel trade tensions, like I said, within the East African region. Business analysts say the policy may also complicate efforts to harmonize investment, laws and mobility within the East African region. Because the idea for the East African region is to have a bloc, right, and have a single market, which is considered one of the key pillars to long-term regional economic growth for the region. In terms of exactly the scope or ratio of these businesses, I don't really have the data here, but it definitely has spurred some impact with some neighbors like Kenyans also feeling like they also should create or take retaliatory measures against Tanzania for that. Diplomats and chambers of commerce within the East African region are reportedly seeking clarification on exactly how the ban will be enforced and whether the current already foreign-owned businesses in the affected sectors will be allowed to continue operating, and if so, for how long. But of course, officials maintain that the enforcement will be gradual and involve sensitization campaigns to ensure a smooth transition and prevent disruptions.
And how will authorities actually police this? How are they going to ensure that the restrictions that they're putting in place are actually going to be adhered to? I'm thinking of the type of penalties, perhaps, that they are wanting to impose on the foreigners.
Yeah, so this is where I think many of the questions that businesses have in terms of what exactly will it look like, this enforcement policy. We know that there are a lot of foreign nationals from all over East Africa and Tanzania, as well as in other parts of the world, like Chinese small-scale traders, who traditionally were seen as major investors in the country. Now, the implementation is what everybody is trying to find out on exactly what will be done and how the execution of this ban will be done. What we do know is that they have been discussions of even imprisonment for those who will, sort of ignore this ban and continue to want to, to trade when the ban is in effect.
Let's look at this, Daniel, from the perspective of the Tanzanian government as well as the citizens of Tanzania. How have the citizens received this and how are they due to benefit?
Yeah, so let me just give you a little more context before I answer that. The law, or some of the regulations that are speculating, is that a foreigner who is conducting businesses that have been banned is liable to a fine of up to 10 million Tanzanian shillings, which is about $4,000. And of course, if it is a Tanzanian helping these foreigners who are doing this business, would face a imprisonment of 3 months in prison. Is additionally a fine of $5 million. So it's a very sort of serious issue that the government is implementing here. But without very clear methodologies, some people feel like the announcement has come premature, and there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered.
As we're speaking, I'm reminded of a situation that currently exists in South Africa, where South African citizens would very much, in many instances, welcome what the government of Tanzania has done. There is some conflict with, foreign nationals or non-citizens owning what we call spaza shops. These are, small informal shops that are found within the townships, and locals saying that those really need to be ring-fenced for the citizens. So something that the Tanzanian government is doing in this regard. But Daniel Kijo, thank you very much for that update. What then is the way ahead now that this has been made official?
Well, they have been, again, there's a lot of questions left, but it is not something that's uniquely, sudden or a discussion that is out of the blue. Over the last year or so, there have been some trade tensions between Kenya and Tanzania. There have been import bans of certain products across the border, products being, getting spoiled on the border while waiting to cross. There have been issues of Chinese merchants in Kariakoo, which is Tanzania's biggest market, facing backlash from local traders because usually the marching guys or the hawkers, street hawkers, or maybe the lowest level, smaller scale of businesses used to sell small items, and now that itself has been invaded, perhaps, if you like, by Chinese national, other national from Malawi and Zimbabwe. So there could be, obviously, we're hoping it doesn't become a situation like we've seen in Southern Africa and other parts of the world, because Tanzania historically has not had such experiences. However, it seems like there's a sense of protectionism from the Tanzanian government on its locals and to grow its own economy in the face of, again, a conflicting perception of regional integration and single market direction. So it is a bit confusing.
Daniel Kijo, thank you very much for that update coming to us from Tanzania, SABC News correspondent. Taking us to exactly 4:30 Central African time. Let's head over now to the markets desk where Thabiso Lehoko is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Tami. $1 in South Africa is trading at 17 Rand 90. In Botswana, it's at 13 Pula 31. In Namibia, it is trading at 17 Namibian dollars 90. And in Zambia, it is trading at 23 kwacha to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 619. Ethiopia, it's at 137 birr 998. In Uganda, it's at 3,000 shilling 566. And in Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shilling 570. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,529,000 naira. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 49 Egyptian pound 665. In Tunisia, it is at 2 dinar 884. Algeria, 129 dinar 535. And the Moroccan dirham is trading at 944 to the US dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is at 2,869 to the dollar. And look at commodities markets now. Gold is trading at $3,318 and platinum at $1,384 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $72.89. a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And for the business of sport, a very good afternoon to you, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon, Tammy. We begin with the business of sports with Olympics and funding. South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee SASCOC says national federations have formed a strategic task team to engage Sports Minister Gethin McKenzie and his department after heavy funding cuts. Sports have been hit by budget cuts totaling about $2 million this year, which have seen cuts in government funding of up to 60% for codes such as athletics and swimming, while SASCOC and a few others received nothing. SASCOC described the cuts as an unfolding financial crisis that will derail the upward performance trajectory of all the South African teams and individual athletes. SASCOC President Hendricks said his organization had started talks with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. After the engagement, SASCOC brought together national federations to gather insights, assess implications of the funding cuts, and determine a strategic united response. And a group of concerned members of the Athletics South Africa, ASA, is calling for the organization's president, James Moloi, acting chief executive officer, Terence Makogodela, and the entire ASA board to step aside within 7 days. The group has threatened to take drastic action, including organizing a march to ASA offices if their demand to have Moloi and the board step aside is not met within the stipulated time. Revelations of misappropriation of federation's funds on the part of Moloi and Magogodela were made last month when ASA appeared before Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Sports, Culture and Arts. The duo admitted to the accusations and tried to justify the use of the bank cards for purchases at the bottle store and tavern, saying they entertained clients of the association. It has been more than a month since those revelations were made. The group is accusing the board of misappropriation of funds and lack of governance, amongst others. Among the group is former ASA board member and former athlete Dorangwevu.
The ASA president to step aside and allow investigation to take place at ASA office, because we feel he's still there and there's investigation taking place. So we appeal for him to step aside, him and the CEO of ASA.
And while the group doesn't have the support of the majority of ASA provinces, with only about 6 of the organization's 17 provinces supporting it, Mangwevu says they can't sit and keep quiet while the road continues at Athletics South Africa.
6 provinces, KZN, Border, CG Central Gauteng Athletics, Limpopo, SWD, Central Western District. Yeah, there are 6 total. Yes, the minority that sees that athletics needs a proper government. We need accountability at athletics. There's no way people can make admissions of misappropriation of funds and not even having answers, and there's no accountability. And the majority is happy with that. We, the minority, won't be sitting back and saying that must go on. We're going to try to be corrective. It's nothing personal. We are not intending to injure athletics, not trying to harm anybody. We just need accountability.
Long-distance runner Kineilwe Sesing says athletes deserve leaders who have the best interests of athletes at heart.
My concern is that we want our president to step down for the sake of the athletics, because we are from far the athletics, so we don't want anything else from Yena. Just step down. That's it. I'm not against Mr. Moloi, but for the sake of athletics.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figure Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa On Channel Africa, the African perspective. African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 4:38 Central African time. Now, the Pan-African Parliament budget for the years 2025 and 2026 was under the spotlight. This is during a debate at a session held earlier today in Johannesburg, South Africa. The Committee on Monetary and Financial Affairs broke down how the institution spends the African Union budget. The Parliament received $650,000 budget allocation from the African Union Executive Council. Now, the debate heard that while the approved allocation does fall short of addressing all of PAP's financial needs, it does mark a significant shift in AU sentiment toward the role as well as the relevance of the continental legislature. Now, the newly sworn-in Ghanaian Member of Parliament, Frank Dompra, says the report on the budget was impressive.
The report on the budget was largely good. It's impressive. But I felt that as a parliament, we have taken a proud decision in terms of the areas of importance and significance to us. So in my estimation, I believe that in our presentation, especially when it comes to budgeting, we should be given a full awareness of the key areas of importance, and then eventually we can put into proper context and find out to what extent are we succeeding in the adoption and complying with the proud decision taking. That's the first one, into the budget. Then I also felt that now I'm aware I have a strong area in the area of environment. So the European Union is coming out with a legislation where attention will be given to developing countries, particularly Africa, where they will look at the carbon trade concept, where we can harvest millions of dollars just by going to the necessary protocol and planting trees, which will offset carbon emission from other industrialized countries. The European Union, I know about that. I also know about the UAE. Interestingly, they are also doing it. And I feel that I know a number of countries. Ghana is an example, for instance. We have an exchange program with Switzerland. And with last month, for instance, a private developer, in terms of these matters, received over $1.6 million. And there are many more of such interventions across the continent. I feel that it should be one of the front burner issues that we should take up, and as a matter of getting innovative in terms of source of funding in funding our project, because there will always not be enough funds, and I think that's an area we can look at in terms of the budgeting. Then on the model law on factoring, I think is also impressive. I doff my cap to the presidency, but it should be done in context. We don't need to rehash or reinvent the wheel. There are models across the world. We need to find the one that is good to our situation, then we can appropriate it. We've also passed the largest trade agreement, the Continental Free Trade Agreement area, apart from the WHO. And so we should know how we can bring in the variables in terms of finance, banking, and SMEs. These are very important.
So a number of countries come August 1st will be affected by the US tariffs. Just in your view, how can they mitigate against these tariffs?
Well, the world is evolving. I think right from the Second World War, where the globe went through a number of evolutions. We got the Marshall Plan from the multilateral bodies, the World Bank and the IMF. We came out with the Marshall Plan to how to build Europe. Now we are also witnessed the development of the BRICS, where a number of countries, China, who obviously because they are a huge population, India, China, I'm aware of South Africa, a number of countries also gravitating towards the BRICS. To tell you that the vagaries of global politics is changing, and Africa cannot remain unconcerned. So we should also take our destiny in our hands. It cannot always be the case that we'll always be at the receiving end. So if America is pushing unfriendly measures, then we must also think on our feet and find out.
All right, that was the newly sworn-in Ghanaian member of the Pan-African Parliament, Frank Dompra. He was speaking to Channel Africa's Nhlanhla Mahlangu, and takes us to exactly 4:42.
Africa in business on Channel Africa.
Now, it's a year now since the National Bank of Ethiopia, NBE, made changes to its monetary, external and financial sector policies. The East African country's comprehensive macroeconomic reforms have paved the way for sustainable as well as inclusive growth across all sectors of that economy. Earlier this year, you'll remember the International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva lauded the country's strong progress in the country's homegrown economic reform program. For more on this, we joined on the line by Merid Fikiryohannes, founder and CEO of Pragma Investment Advisory. Good to have you with us once again, Merid.
Pleasure to be on the show as always. Thank you.
So how would you assess the impact of Ethiopia's key economic reforms, let's say, over the past year? Did they achieve what they intended to achieve? And perhaps a good place to start is maybe to take it one step back and say, what is it that they wanted to achieve?
Yes. So, yes, thank you. So what the main intention of the main purpose of the policy was to address the macroeconomic imbalances, right? Before a year ago, Ethiopia used to have the official rate of $1 was traded around 58 birr, but the black market was 120 birr, 125 birr. So, and then that kind of broken forex market, and then at the same time, we didn't have a proper monetary policy, and the government was not properly utilizing its fiscal policy. So there was huge microeconomic imbalances that get to be reflected on the balance of payment, at the same time on the forex market, both and then fiscal policy and monetary policy. So the major purpose of the undertaking this microeconomic reform with the assistance of the IMF and the World Bank program was to correct the macroeconomic imbalances. Number one is the forex, in order to minimize or eliminate the gap between the official rate and the black market rate, which somehow it has been attained in the past 1 year. Somehow we're just seeing a momentary swings on the black market. However, Ethiopia has managed to close the gap between the official rate and the black market rate. Number one. Number two is once you correct the forex market, the first immediate impact that you see is the correction on the balance of payment. Before Ethiopia floated its currency, the aggregate export we did before we floated the currency was around $3.8 billion. Mind you, now that it has been a year since we floated the currency, all those unofficial contraband trading has joined the official market, and now this year's fiscal year's export of goods is standing around $8.3 billion, right? And then the overall forex inflow before we floated the currency, it was $24 billion. Right now we're standing $32 billion. So from a balance of payment perspective, export has performed very well. Remittance performed very well. And also export of service in all other aspects of the balance of payment has performed very well, which results increasing the country's reserves of currency at the central bank by almost twofold. It used to be that Ethiopia used to have less than a month, mind you, less than a month forex reserve on its balance sheet. But however, right now it's standing around up to 3 months, close to 4 months. So all these things is because we corrected the forex, and then at the same time there is a number of reforms that the government is doing in terms of making sure that the country is implementing a new modern interest-based monetary policy, and then at the same time curbing inflation, reducing inflation, and making sure that there's no new money being advanced from the central bank to the central government.
And I want to touch on that a little bit, Merid, because one of the objectives was depreciating the birr in order to boost export. Has that actually been achieved, or is it worsening inflation and also affecting import costs?
Yes. So it has served its purpose from a policy measure perspective, from a perspective of boosting export. Like I said earlier, like before we floated the currency, our aggregated export of goods was $3.8 billion. But right now, after floating, it is $8.3 billion, right? So that is, it is fully boosted the export aspect. More importantly, mind you, the most of the Ethiopia's export in terms of gold, coffee, and also other livestock used to be traded via illegal trades and via contrabands. Now it has managed to capture that, and it makes it get to be reflected on the official market through the official balance of payment. So it is a major correction in that aspect.
And I wonder how the private sector activity has been affected. One would assume that there has been an uptick. Is this in fact reality?
Yes. So from a private sector perspective, I think one thing this microeconomic reform has done is that, I mean, there used to be a line to get a forex. Okay, but right now there's, I mean, not everywhere. Not everywhere, but in terms of there is no lineup. For the first time, companies like Henneken and Dangote, they have been repatriating their declared dividend, which it was a huge difficulty back in the days before we floated the currency. Mind you, the biggest investor, the biggest conglomerate company in the continent, Dangote, has fully repatriated all its dividend and profits of $150 million within this fiscal year, within this reform period, right? And the same goes with also other multinational companies that they have been enabled to repatriate their profit and dividends. So this is a major confidence. This is not something that usually happens in Ethiopia before we floated the currency, but now, at least from a foreign investor perspective, now at least now I can put my money in and there's the confidence that I can take out my money, right? So that is a major thing. And from importer perspective, it was a huge difficulty getting forex, but now it's not a difficulty. Mind you, forex sales of businesses before we floated the currency within a month, the banking system in Ethiopia used to avail $258 million on average. Right now, after we floated the currency, the market at least get almost $500 million dollars of new forex is being pumped on a monthly basis to the private sector. So that's availed some of the major problems of which the private sector faces. Of course, there are rooms for improvement, mind you. There are things that we need to address as a market, but from a legacy perspective, at least things that Ethiopia used to be known, it's not any longer.
Certainly, the tide turning there, Mered. Thank you very much for that update on the 1-year anniversary of the changes of the monetary policy within Ethiopia. That's Mered Fikirhannes, founder and CEO of Pragma Investment Advisory.
Big news from Channel Africa. Now you can listen and watch your favorite shows on Channel Africa. Channel Africa is streaming live on the internet on all our social media pages at Channel Africa 1 from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. Central African Time. Download the SABC Plus app or visit our website www.channelafrica.co.za and stream us live on all our social media pages at Channel Africa 1. Channel Africa now streaming for your eyes and ears only. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
A focus now on agriculture on the African continent. We do know that the continent holds most of the world's uncultivated arable land. But despite this, it does remain a net food importer, with imports standing at over $40 billion every single year. Now, Absa Bank says that the continent must move beyond donor dependency and mobilize capital for climate-smart agriculture and also emulate successful models like the models that have been followed rather successfully in Kenya as far as the tea cooperatives are concerned. You can also cite Ivory Coast and their cashew strategy, and looking at South Africa, the use of genetically modified crops. To unpack this further, we are joined on the line this afternoon by Abri Rotenbach, Managing Executive for Sector Head Agriculture at Absa Corporate and Investment Banking, CIB. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon and welcome and also welcome to the listeners.
Abri, perhaps one of the most obvious questions and one of the most intriguing questions to start off with is, with the understanding that Africa has so much unused farmland, why does the continent still import so much of its food? One would think you've got the arable land, surely you should be able to produce enough to feed yourselves.
Yeah, so I think maybe if I can just give a perspective from ABSA CIB. So the first point I would like to make is that if you look at the whole globe, one of the problems is this population growth. And then if you try and plot for the past 100 years food production, the only thing that kept us on equal paring was the use of technology. And I think, if you look at the growth rate, it is slowing down. So, Africa is definitely earmarked, as one of the continents where there could be an increase in production. If we specifically look at, some of the reasons why it's not happening at the moment, we can start off by, it's that specific use of technology. We see that in Africa and the continent, there's been a bigger push, to have more land, for production instead of concentrating on increasing the yield per land. So that's the use of biotechnology seed. We also, recognize that policy and government policy, is a big driver in creating an environment, from trade, right to the use of certain seeds and certain technologies. You can even cite, communication, the use and the availability of data in certain areas where you can use, certain technology where it's prohibited, from a network perspective. And then I think it's the use of technology in the broader sense, and it could be from biotechnology to precision farming. It's fairly expensive. If we look outside of South Africa, farms are quite small, which means that you do not necessarily have that economy of scale. So you need this value chains, to enable, with a big value chain player, whether it's a buyer or a processor, that then can aggregate and enable this value chain.
Abri, I'd like to pick up on two of the main issues that you've highlighted, and the first one being issues of technology and infrastructure. What are the lessons you believe can be learned from countries like Kenya's tea cooperatives and the cashew nut success that comes out of countries like the Ivory Coast?
Yeah, so I think if I can quickly look at, at the tea, and once again, from our perspective as ABSA, it's a nice mixture of commercial business, but and also small scale farmers. They share in that tea cooperative, so they members there, they share in the value chain and in the profits. So I do think it is that collaboration, creating that environment, government allowing, from a legislation perspective, an infrastructure perspective, and then, the ability to combine all players in the value chain to share, in the advances, in that sector. So it's really this collaborative approach, and we can see it across, the continent. In the Ivory Coast with the cashews, it's exactly the same. You've got big private players. The government recognize how important this specific commodity is, and then it enables, create the environment and infrastructure, for everybody to be involved there. And I think if you look at the Ivory Coast, especially, on the women's side, they were able to attract, a number of smaller female farmers, to participate in this. So once again, that collaboration, coming clear out, but then government enabling.
We'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Abri Rotenbach, Managing Executive, Sector Head for Agriculture at ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking. So much more that one can unpack, and we'll have an opportunity to do this at another time. Thank you very much, Abri, for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. You have a great one too. Some interesting things that Aubrey touched on. When you look at technology, what kind of role can mobile money, for example, play? The role that genetically modified seeds can play. He mentioned that in connection with South Africa specifically, and issues around policy changes that are critical in attracting investment and also boosting agricultural productivity across the African continent. Well, that's how we close it for today on Africa in Business as we make way for the French desk. We've got Joelle standing by. Bonjour, mademoiselle.
Bonjour, Tammy.
What do you have
C'est
in store
plutôt
for us
madame.
today?
Alors, sur Vue d'Afrique aujourd'hui, il sera question de la tension qui monte en Côte d'Ivoire après l'annonce de la candidature d'Alassane Ouattara, et nous parlerons aussi des plus de 7 morts en Angola lors de certaines émeutes. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci de rester connecté. Merci, Tammy.
Merci beaucoup. Restez connectés, as she says. It's exactly 2 minutes to 5 p.m. Central African Time. Thank you to our amazing team right here on Africa in Business. Our producer, Mabubu Lok, our technical producer, Monde Mtambo, and on social media, we've got Talent Butelezi, News Desk, Matapelo Mahapi, the Economics Desk, Tabiso Lehoko, and from the Sporting Desk, Figile Lengwati. I'm Tami Ngubeni. This has been your Wednesday edition of Africa in Business. Reste connecté. This is Channel Africa.